Hello everyone, for today's video this is my Sky Striker deck profile for June 2022. This is a going second build in particular because I prefer to use hand traps and other various effects to stop my opponent early on their turn, just to get to my turn as quickly as possible. But without further ado, let's get started on the deck profile. For the aces I run 2 Rose and 3 Ray. 3 Ray is the mandatory amount to have just because she is the ace that you would prefer to see overall over Rose. Even though Rose's in-hand effect is pretty convenient, she doesn't not have the effect to tag out, and her graveyard effect is pretty rare overall, or it's pretty rare to pull off, but nonetheless it is something that I would prefer to have at 2, not 3. There are some moments where I wish I could run 3 Rose, but it's not really needed since I prefer to run a hand trap than a 3rd Rose, just so I can have the likelihood of seeing another hand trap just to stop more potential plays on my opponent's turn. But those are the aces. For the mandatory hand traps, whether the build is going first or second, is 3 Effect Veiler, 3 Ash Blossom, and 3 Infinite Impermanence. Effect Veiler and Infinite Impermanence serve the same purpose to potentially stop my opponent's combo starter, just in case if they were to extend, which is pretty much most decks nowadays, just so they could make another move. And I find that very useful that Gamma cannot stop Infinite Impermanence, but it can potentially stop Effect Veiler. There are some moments where I am under D-Shifter, so Effect Veiler is useless, but Impermanence and Ash do work out because Infinite Impermanence requires no cards on field. Ash Blossom requires you just to ditch it from hand. Ash Blossom's variety to, well, stop adding a card from deck to hand, sending a card from deck to graveyard, or special summoning from the deck is very powerful. So of course, that's why I run 3 of each, just because to potentially stop combo starters is very useful overall. For the other hand traps, I run 3 Ghost Ogre, which is something I'm currently testing at the moment, even though, like, if I were to run Ogre, I like 2 instead of 3. But I do want to maximize the chances of seeing hand traps, so that's why I'm currently running 3. Ogre does have some situations where she stops a late combo starter for my opponent. That, or it stops Fateful Adventure from what I can recall, because Fateful Adventure is a very powerful card which allows him to add the equip spell for the token, and to stop potential Griffin Rider or Illegal Knight, but most likely Griffin Rider, because Griffin Rider is the Omni Negate. And those are the only 2 scenarios I can think of that Ghost Ogre could stop. But yeah. For the other hand trap is 3 Nibiru. I understand that Nibiru varies from time to time because my opponent is not guaranteed to summon 5 times just so I can use the rock. But it is a chance I'm willing to take only because Nibiru is that strong. And there are, well, a variety of combo decks in this current format which do summon more than 5 times. So if I time Nibiru to activate on their late combo, it would just potentially ruin everything for them, and they would have to pass their turn from there. So that's why I am running 3 Nibiru, just because it's that powerful. I do like 2 because I have seen some profiles where 2 copies are preferred, or Nibiru's inside, but I'm currently maining it just because I rather see this hand trap at the moment instead of DD Crow. I do like DD Crow, but I'm currently siding it only because DD Crow varies in certain decks when Nibiru stops general decks altogether. For the spells, I run Call by the Grave, Reinforcement of the Army, Terraforming, and 2 Pot of the Desires. These are not the Sky Striker names. Rhoda adds a warrior, which is like Rayo Rose. Terraforming adds the field spell, which is Area 0. Pot of Desires. I'd rather run Desires right now over Prosperity because Prosperity is a 1-for-1 when Desires is a legit +1 once I remove Engage from the deck early on, whether it's by sending it through Hayate or having it in hand early on. Call by the Grave is something I can live without, even though it is pretty useful to stop my opponent's hand trap if they were to Ash my Engage, for instance. They wouldn't really Ash Rhoda in particular, or Terraforming, which is kind of weird, but they don't know if I'm running Mystic Mine or not. For the Sky Striker spells, I run Area 0, of course, because it's a terraforming target. Hornet Jones, because it's another ace name to special summon a monster, just so I can go to my aces faster. Engage, because, well, Engage is self-explanatory, of course. Multi-Roll is a very useful card, just so I can replay Widow Anchor or Shark Cannon again. And speaking of Shark Cannon, I run 2 Shark Cannon. I prefer 1 just because I don't really like Shark Cannon at the moment, but I do run multiple copies only because of desires, and if I were to banish 1, it wouldn't really hurt that badly. And this also applies to Afterburner, which I run 3 of. I do prefer 2 of Afterburner just because I like 2 Afterburner over 3, but as I mentioned before, I run Desire, so banishing an Afterburner doesn't really hurt that badly. Also, there are some situations where they would build a negate early on, and Afterburner is a great bait out for that. There are alternatives such as Raigeki, but I don't really like Raigeki because it's not a Sky Striker name. But there are alternative builds where people run 3 Raigeki, 3 Lightning Storm just to get rid of their aces faster or bait out negates early on. Another Sky Striker card is 3 Widow Anchor. Of course, that's self-explanatory because a Widow Anchor is an effect negation, also a makeshift Change of Heart or Mind Control, but you can actually attack with the monster you stole, so I guess it's more of a Change of Heart. I do not run Change of Heart in main nor sided because I don't really prefer that card, or it's just a rare scenario altogether. And for the last 3 slots is playset of Lightning Storms. This playset of Lightning Storms can be another potential hand trap like DD Crow. This could be replaced with DD Crow, but I prefer Lightning Storm because I do not currently know if my opponent were to run back row, so I am willing to take the risk just to open up Lightning Storm, or they just play out their turn without me having a hand trap, but I have Lightning Storm just to have an easy bait out and destroy everything they've set up potentially. But yeah, that's it for the main deck. This is 40 cards. For the extra deck, I run 3 Kagari, that's self-explanatory, 3 Shizuku, 3 Hayate. So, I do see some conflict with 3 Hayate depending on player's preference, but I prefer 3 Hayate because I see Hayate more than a second Zeke. So there's that scenario. Also, if I were to send something through Prosperity, it would be either that second Zeke or this third Hayate, even though there are some late game scenarios where I would use the third Hayate to win the game, and not many people expect that. The one kinda, of course, just because it's another Sky Striker ace name, and potentially stopping my opponent's big ace is very useful. And there are extremely rare scenarios where I actually use Kindness Effect for time, but I don't really prefer to win via time effect, but if it happens, it happens. Zeke, I like Zeke. There are moments where I love to run a second Zeke, but I unfortunately never see it, ever. So these are the Sky Striker aces. For the rest of my extra deck, it's 1 dark. There are some scenarios where I would go to dark, but I likely win at that time. And the rest of the extra deck is the access code package. Hulky Firebacks to bring out Effect Veiler, Celine to reuse the Effect Veiler from the graveyard just to go up to access code, or Dark can lead up to access code the same way, depending on the matchup. But yeah, these are self-explanatory all on their own. For the side deck, I run 3 DD Crow. DD Crow varies depending on the matchup, like I mentioned before, such as Despia or another deck that uses Grave as a potential resource, but DD Crow is very powerful. I do like 2 DD Crow, but of course I want to see the card, so that's why I'm currently running 3. And speaking of another 3 copies, Token Collector. This card is really useful against current meta, such as Brave, because of course they have a lot of 3-ups going around. So Token Collector is a card that I'd love to see. Oh, this also helps against Sword Soul, so that's really cool too. The most likely scenario that I prefer 3 Token Collectors, depending on meta, but I would run 2 token collector, and 1 zombie world just because of the Fluanderies matchup. Because once you play zombie world, that would be really effective against Sun Avalon and Fluanderies. But yeah. 3 Cosmic Cyclone. Now, this card is very helpful against certain back row cards, nonetheless, even though if I have to pay 1,000 life points, so be it. This does stop that Fluanderies continuous spell where they just tribute 1 card, nonetheless, from field, which is, I think, is pretty insane. Or this also stops Missing Mind just by like banishing it early on and then you just proceed to go off. But this card could be replaced with a trap card called Typhoon, which is another alternative to stop Mystic Mind. But that would depend on the scenario, whether I'm facing it or I'm facing another tech card called Secret Village of the Spellcasters, which Cosmic Cyclone does not work against because you'd have to have a spellcaster in order to use spell cards. So that's why I think Typhoon is very powerful. And they would likely run like a back row of 2 or more. So that's how Typhoon is pretty insane. That's what my friends told me about. For the other slots, 3 Shared Ride. My deck has a large quantity of hand traps, so Shared Ride is a makeshift maxi, but it works out because I get to draw cards and benefit from them adding. For the last card, or the last 3, Dimensional Barrier. Dimensional Barrier is a very powerful card because, well, of course, Despia for fusion, and potentially more fusion decks coming up later this year. Libromancer, Drytron, which stop, so you just declare Ritual, you stop that. Can't really think of other card types at the moment in regards to like special summons. Maybe rogue matchups such as like XCs, but I'm not so sure myself. But nonetheless, D-Barrier is a very powerful card. So if you were to go first in this deck, you decide D-Barrier, Shared Ride. It's very useful because, well, the majority of cards you're running is hand traps, and it doesn't particularly matter whether you have a back row, well, you set back row and pass, because nonetheless, if they have back row removal, you just chain whatnot, and it doesn't really hurt you that badly. I have thought about the artifact engine, but it doesn't particularly help because I could potentially break with Scythe, which does kind of hurt. I have tried the Trap Trick build from Poe. I found it very nice, but I wouldn't run 3 Trap Trick. I would run 2 and D-Barrier in the main deck if I were to ever go back to that. But yeah, that's pretty much the deck profile. I hope you guys enjoyed my content. If you were to check out more, please consider subscribing and liking, commenting on the video, and see whether you want to find out more. But without further ado, thank you for watching.